The last resort. The stars watched indifferently as another world died. Across the emergency channels, the screams of billions faded into static. Then silence. Orion Prime, once the jewel of the Centauri sector, was now just another graveyard. In the hastily assembled war chamber aboard the Alliance flagship Eternal Dawn, representatives from 17 species sat in stunned silence as the holographic display confirmed what they already knew. Another defeat, another extinction-level event. The Voidborn had claimed their 27th world in less than a galactic standard year. Grand Admiral Scenario, a tall Virilian with iridescent scales that had long lost their luster, stabbed a six-fingered hand at the tactical display. The Epsilon defense grid is gone. The Voidborn will reach the core worlds within 12 cycles. His normally melodious voice had grown hoarse from days of giving retreat orders. We have lost half our fleet. Our remaining forces are scattered across 3 sectors. Counselor Theri, the ancient Meyer whose species had first formed the Alliance 10,000 years ago, closed her 4 eyes in contemplation. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper, but every being in the room strained to hear the wisdom of the eldest spacefaring race. In all our collected histories, we have never faced an enemy like the Voidborn. They consume energy itself. Our weapons make them stronger. Our shields mean nothing. They learn, they adapt, and they show no mercy. Her translucent hands trembled slightly, but there was one species, one that we feared almost as much as we now fear the Voidborn. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew which species she meant. The humans, said Commander Xal, the compact, metallic-skinned Cronin military strategist. But they've been gone for centuries. They abandoned this galaxy after the Morning War. Not gone, Theri corrected. Self-exiled. And they left behind contingencies. The word hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The humans had been the Alliance's greatest allies and its most terrifying enemies. Their capacity for both compassion and violence had been unmatched. When they departed the galactic stage after nearly destroying themselves in the Morning War, many species had silently breathed a collective sigh of relief. Scenario's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting what I think you are, Counselor? The Accords explicitly forbid accessing human military archives. Even mention of Project Nightshade is forbidden by Alliance law. Theri's ancient features hardened. And what use are laws if none of us remain alive to follow them? The Voidborn do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They consume. They destroy. And soon, they will reach Harmony, our capital world. The holographic display shifted, showing a star map with a rapidly advancing darkness creeping across known space like a cancer. Trillions of lives had already been extinguished. Trillions more would follow. I was there, Theri continued, when the humans sealed their archives and left our galaxy. I was there when they warned us never to use what they left behind. But they also told me, privately, that if extinction ever became inevitable. She paused, her ancient voice trembling. They left us a key, a final option. Protests erupted around the table. The Drull representatives chittered in alarm, their mandibles clicking furiously. The Solari ambassadors by luminescent patterns flashed warning colors. But it was Tech Minister Kilia, the young Ardenian whose world had fallen just 3 cycles ago, who spoke what many were thinking. Let me understand. You want to activate some ancient human weapon of mass destruction. The same humans whose war tactics were so extreme that they quarantined themselves from the rest of galactic civilization out of shame. Theri nodded slowly. Not a weapon, precisely. Project Nightshade was something else. Something the humans created when they still believed they might face extinction themselves. The chamber erupted into arguments, but Scenario raised his voice above the chaos. Enough. The room fell silent. We are out of options, out of time. If the counselor has knowledge of something that might save us, I will hear it. He turned to Theri. What exactly is Project Nightshade? Theri withdrew a small crystalline device from her robes. ancient human technology, crafted before most of the beings in this room were born. The humans were always preparing for worst-case scenarios. They created Nightshade as their final contingency against extinction-level threats. Not a fleet, not a superweapon. Her voice dropped even lower. A single operative, a human, but more and less. She placed the crystal on the table, where it projected the coordinates of a system at the edge of the galaxy, a red dwarf star orbited by a single dead moon, a forbidden zone under the human departure accords. They called such beings shadows, enhanced beyond recognition, programmed with a single purpose: survival at any cost. This one was their last, their most advanced. Too dangerous to deploy, too valuable to destroy. So they sealed it away, dormant but alive, with activation protocols only to be used in the most desperate circumstances. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Commander Xal spoke. "And you believe this? Shadow can defeat the Voidborn when our combined fleets could not." Thery's expression was grim. "I believe the humans understood violence and survival in ways our civilizations never could. I believe they created contingencies for threats we could not imagine. And I believe we have exhausted all other options." Admiral Scenario studied the navigational data. "This system is 3 jumps away. We could reach it in 20 hours with the eternal dawn. If we do this," warned Kilia, "we violate every principle the Alliance stands for. We break faith with the humans themselves, who warned us against it. If we don't do this," Scenario countered, "there will be no Alliance left to stand for anything." The decision, when it came, was not unanimous, but it was final. Desperation made for strange choices. The crystal contained not just coordinates but activation codes, ancient keys to unlock what humanity had deemed too dangerous to unleash upon the galaxy. 20 hours later, the eternal dawn emerged from its final jump into a system untouched for centuries. The red dwarf cast an eerie crimson light over the dead moon that orbited it, a desolate rock with no atmosphere, no life signs, nothing to suggest it housed anything of importance. But as they approached, their sensors detected a faint energy signature emanating from deep beneath the surface. Ancient human technology, still functioning after all this time. "This is it," Thery whispered, clutching the activation crystal. "May the stars forgive us for what we are about to unleash." The landing party was small, just Scenario, Thery, Xal, and a security detail. They touched down on the moon's barren surface and followed the energy signature to what appeared to be solid rock. But when Thery approached with the crystal, a seam appeared in the stone, revealing a doorway that had not been opened in centuries. The facility below was dark, powered down to minimal life support functions. Their footsteps echoed through corridors built for humans, past technology that even the Alliance's best scientists would struggle to understand. And finally, they'd reached the central chamber, a circular room dominated by a single stasis pod. Inside, barely visible through the frosted surface, was a human figure. "This is madness," Xal muttered. "One being against the Voidborn." Scenario's expression was grim. "We've come this far." He nodded to Thery, who approached the control console and inserted the crystal. Ancient systems hummed to life. Lights flickered on throughout the facility. A synthetic voice spoke in the human language, which their translators rendered into Alliance standard. Project Nightshade reactivation protocol initiated. Biostasis termination sequence commencing. Warning: Subject Alpha is rated Omega-class hazard. Confirm authorization. Thery looked back at her companions, then to the pod. Authorization confirmed. Reactivate Subject Alpha. The stasis field dissipated. The pod's cover slid back with a hydraulic hiss. Steam rose from within as the temperature rapidly equalized. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in a motion almost too fast to track, the figure sat up. The human, if it could still be called that, was tall, pale, and unnervingly still. Its eyes opened, revealing irises of such a deep black that they seemed to absorb the light around them. No emotion crossed its face as it surveyed the aliens before it. No confusion, no disorientation after centuries of suspended animation. It spoke, its voice low and perfectly modulated. Project Nightshade, Operative Shadow 7. Activated. Identify threat parameters. Scenario stepped forward. I am Grand Admiral Scenario of the Galactic Alliance. We face an extinction-level threat called the Voidborn. They have destroyed 27 worlds and will reach our core systems within days. The humans gaze fixed on him, unblinking. Describe the Voidborn's capabilities. For the next 10 minutes, they explained everything they knew about the enemy. Their ability to absorb energy, their hive-mind coordination, their relentless advance across the galaxy. Throughout it all, the human's expression never changed. When they finished, it simply nodded once. Acceptable parameters for activation. Mission accepted. It rose from the pod with fluid grace, revealing a form covered in a skin-tight suit that seemed to shift colors with its movements. I will require a tactical overview, weapons access, and transport to the nearest Voidborn incursion point. Just like that, Kilia asked, disbelieving. You'll help us fight an enemy you know nothing about, after centuries of stasis. For the first time, something like emotion flickered across the human's face, the ghost of a smile, cold and predatory. This is what I was made for, Ardenian. This is all I am. It stepped forward, and despite themselves, the Alliance representatives stepped back. I am the contingency for when all else fails. I am what humans created when they still believed in winning at any cost. Theri's expression was troubled. The humans who created you also sealed you away. They deemed you too dangerous. Yes, the operative agreed without inflection. They were right to do so. I am not a savior. I am extinction's answer to extinction. The black eyes surveyed them all. But you have already decided that the alternative is worse. As they escorted the human back to their ship, Saul moved close to Scenario. I don't trust it, he whispered. How do we know it won't turn on us? We don't, Scenario admitted. But Theri is right. We're out of options. Aboard the Eternal Dawn, the human operative accessed their tactical systems with disturbing ease, absorbing information at a rate that left the Alliance analysts stunned. Within hours, it had formulated a strategy. Your conventional warfare approaches are ineffective against the Voidborn, it stated to the assembled command staff. They anticipate logical responses and counter accordingly. What you require is asymmetric warfare, unpredictable, adaptive, and ruthless. That's your solution. Admiral Kree of the Solari contingent demanded. Fight like savages. The operative's black eyes fixed on him. Fighting like savages, as you put it, is how humanity survived for millennia before achieving spaceflight. It is how we survived extinction events, ice ages, and our own self-destructive tendencies. Its voice remained perfectly level. The Voidborn have never encountered humans. They have never experienced what we can do when pushed to the edge of extinction. Scenario intervened before the argument could escalate. What exactly do you propose? The operative outlined a plan so audacious, so seemingly suicidal, that half the command staff dismissed it immediately. It would take a small strike team directly to the leading edge of the Voidborn advance, to the just-conquered world of Destra IV. While the main Alliance fleet staged a diversionary attack, the operative would penetrate the Voidborn's defenses to gather intelligence on their weaknesses. This is insanity, Kree protested. You expect us to commit resources to this suicide mission. The operative regarded him coldly. I expect you to survive, Admiral. That is all I offer. Despite fierce opposition, Scenario approved the plan. They had nothing to lose. The strike team departed hours later. The human operative, Commander Xal, and a dozen elite soldiers from various Alliance species. What followed would later be described as both a miracle and a nightmare. The operative moved through the Voidborn's forces like a ghost, using technologies and combat methods the Alliance had never seen. Where Alliance weapons had been absorbed and rendered useless, the operative employed countermeasures that seemed to turn the Voidborn's own energy absorption against them. The aliens watched in awe and horror as the human tore through enemy formations with calculated brutality, leaving devastation in its wake. It didn't fight like a soldier. It fought like a force of nature, adaptable, relentless, without mercy or hesitation. When the strike team returned to the Eternal Dawn 8 hours later, only the operative, Huxall, and 3 others remained alive. But they brought with them precious data, the first real intelligence on the Voidborn's internal structure and potential vulnerabilities. As medical teams tended to the survivors, Sal pulled Scenario aside, his metallic features set in an expression of deep disturbance. "It's not just what it can do that frightens me," he confessed. "It's how it thinks." During the mission, when we were surrounded, I saw it calculating casualties. Ours and theirs, like variables in an equation. Our lives, even its own life, were just resources to be spent. Scenario looked across the hangar bay to where the operative stood, perfectly still, its suit stained with substances he couldn't identify. "Did it work? Did you find a weakness?" Xel nodded slowly. "Yes, and the operative already has a plan to exploit it." He hesitated. "But Admiral, I'm no longer certain which I fear more, the Voidborn, or what we've awakened to fight them." The human operative turned then, as if sensing their conversation, and met Scenario's gaze across the distance. Those black eyes showed nothing. No triumph, no exhaustion, no humanity, only purpose. And in that moment, Scenario understood what the ancient humans had truly feared about their creation. Not that it would fail, but that it would succeed at a cost too terrible to contemplate. Extinction's edge. The war room aboard the Eternal Dawn had transformed in the days following the Destra IV mission. Where once there had been only despair and retreat strategies, now there were offensive plans, tactical simulations, and a fragile ember of hope. At the center of it all stood the human operative, motionless as a statue when not moving with lethal purpose. It had spent 48 straight hours analyzing the data from Destra IV, interfacing directly with Alliance systems in ways that made the tech specialists nervous. Now it addressed the gathered commanders with cold precision. The Voidborn are not a singular consciousness, but a collective of specialized suborganisms, it explained, manipulating the holographic display to show cellular structures none of them recognized. They appear unified because they communicate at quantum speeds, but they are, at their core, separate entities with specialized functions. Grand Admiral Scenario leaned forward. "And this gives us an advantage. It gives us a target." The operative expanded one section of the display. "This structure acts as a synchronization node for each Voidborn cluster. Destroy it, and the remaining suborganisms lose coordination for approximately 3 minutes before adapting." Commander Xel, still recovering from wounds suffered on Destra IV, studied the display with his good eye. 3 minutes isn't much time. "It's enough," the operative replied. "But conventional weapons remain ineffective. The Voidborn absorb energy and repurpose it. We need something they cannot absorb or adapt to." "And you have such a weapon?" Admiral Kree asked skeptically. The operative's black eyes turned to him. "I am such a weapon, Admiral, but I will need more like me." A ripple of unease passed through the command staff. Counselor Theory, who had remained silent throughout the briefing, finally spoke. "There are no more like you. Project Nightshade was deemed too dangerous to replicate. You were the only one preserved." For the first time, something like emotion crossed the operative's face, a faint tightening around the eyes. "Then we will have to manufacture an alternative. The facility where I was stored contains fabrication technology that can produce what we need." "Produce what, exactly?" Scenario asked. "Nanomechanical infiltration units, self-replicating, programmed to target the synchronization nodes, and operating on principles the Voidborn cannot absorb or predict." The operative's voice remained flat. Human technology from the final days before the Morning War. Forbidden under 17 Alliance statutes. Another silence fell over the room. They had already crossed one forbidden line by awakening the operative. Now it asked them to cross another. How do we know these nanomechanical units won't be as dangerous as the Voidborn themselves? Admiral Creed demanded. Self-replicating technology is banned for good reason. You don't know. The operative answered simply. You have only my assurance that they will be programmed with terminal limitations. They will destroy the Voidborn synchronization nodes, then themselves. Your assurance, Creed repeated bitterly. The assurance of a human weapon so dangerous its own creators locked it away. Yes. The operative didn't attempt to persuade or reassure. Those are your options. Trust me, or face extinction. After heated debate, the Alliance leadership made their choice. The Eternal Dawn returned to the Forbidden Moon, where the operative accessed sealed portions of the facility that had housed it. Ancient manufacturing systems, dormant for centuries, hummed back to life. While the fabrication process ran, Counselor Theory sought out the operative. She found it in a small chamber, surrounded by screens displaying data at speeds no normal mind could process. I have questions, she said, settling her ancient frame onto a bench designed for human proportions. The operative didn't look up. Ask them. What are you? Truly? The archives described Project Nightshade as human soldiers, but you're something more. For a long moment, the operative continued its work. Then it paused, turning those black eyes to her. I was human once, a volunteer. Beyond that, my prior identity is irrelevant and was purposely erased. What remains is a hybrid, biological systems enhanced with nanotechnology, cognitive architecture rewritten for warfare, emotional responses recalibrated for tactical efficiency. A person turned into a weapon, Theory said softly. Yes, no pride or regret colored the word. Humanity faced extinction multiple times throughout its history. Each time, they adapted, became more ruthless in their survival methods. Project Nightshade was the culmination, the logical endpoint of turning humans into perfect survival machines. And is that why they sealed you away? Because you were too efficient. Something flickered across the operative's face, so brief Theory almost missed it. No. They sealed us away because we represented a path they chose to reject. After the Morning War, humanity decided that survival at any cost was no longer acceptable. The operative turned back to its work. They chose extinction over becoming like me. An admirable but ultimately sentimental choice. And yet they preserved you, Theory noted, as a last resort. Humans are nothing if not contradictory, Counselor. They hoped the galaxy would never need me. They feared that someday it might. 3 days later, the nanofabrication was complete. The operative presented a container no larger than a hand, filled with what looked like metallic dust. Enough to neutralize the Voidborn advance, it stated. But optimal deployment requires direct insertion into the heart of their forces, at Nexus Prime, which they are currently consuming. Nexus Prime, the massive space station that had once been the Alliance's scientific hub, now overrun by Voidborn. The operative's plan called for a strike team to penetrate the station, deploy the nanonites at its core, then escape before the chain reaction began. This is a one-way mission, Sal observed grimly. For most of the team, yes, the operative acknowledged without emotion. I calculate a 93% probability that the deployment team will not survive. I will go alone. No, Scenario interjected. The Alliance doesn't send others to die while we stay safe. I'll lead a volunteer force. We've all lost worlds, friends, family to the Voidborn. There will be no shortage of volunteers. The operative regarded him impassively. Your sentiment will get you killed, Admiral. But your additional forces may incrementally improve success probability. The mission was prepared in 24 hours. 12 volunteers joined the operative, the best from each Alliance species, each with personal reasons to fight. Their transport would approach Nexus Prime under the cover of a major fleet engagement, drawing the Voidborn's attention while the strike team infiltrated the station. Before departure, Thuri approached the operative one last time. "If you succeed," she said, "what happens to you? Will you return to stasis?" The operative was checking its equipment with mechanical precision. "That decision belongs to the Alliance. I exist to serve my function. And if we asked what you wanted?" The operative paused, something almost like confusion crossing its features. "Want?" It seemed to consider the word as if it were foreign. "I was not designed to want, counselor, only to accomplish objectives." Yet Thuri thought she detected something behind those black eyes, some remnant of the human that had once existed before being transformed into this perfect weapon. "May your ancestors guide your path," she said, offering the traditional Meyer blessing. The operative didn't respond, but inclined its head slightly before boarding the transport. The battle for Nexus Prime began with the largest fleet engagement since the Voidborn invasion started. Every remaining Alliance vessel converged on the massive space station, now surrounded by a swirling dark mass that had once been planets, ships, and living beings consumed by the Voidborn. In the chaos, one small transport slipped through the defensive perimeter. Aboard, the operative briefed the strike team one final time. "The nanounits must be deployed at the station's central hub. Once activated, we will have approximately 4 minutes to reach minimum safe distance before the chain reaction begins." Its black eyes swept over them. "If you're discovered, fight only long enough to allow the mission to continue. Your individual survival is secondary to deployment success." Commander Excel, who had insisted on joining despite his injuries, checked his weapon. "And if we all fall before reaching the hub?" "Then I will continue alone," the operative stated. "I was designed to complete the mission regardless of circumstances." The transport docked with an emergency airlock on Nexus Prime's outer ring. The team moved through darkened corridors, encountering the horrifying transformation the Voidborn had wrought. Walls pulsed with alien tissue. Floors rippled with something between liquid and solid, and occasionally they glimpsed twisted forms that might once have been station personnel, partially absorbed, neither fully living nor dead. The operative led them with unerring precision, navigating through service tunnels and maintenance shafts. Twice they encountered Voidborn sentinels, twisted amalgamations that seemed to serve as the collective sensory organs. Each time, the operative eliminated them with disturbing efficiency before they could alert others. But as they approached the central sections, their luck ran out. A massive chamber blocked their path, filled with swirling, churning Voidborn matter that seemed to sense their presence immediately. "We're detected," the operative announced calmly. "Defensive formation. Prepare for imminent attack." The Voidborn surged toward them from all directions. Tendrils, mouths, appendages emerging from walls and ceiling. The strike team fought with desperate courage. Their specialized weapons, designed based on the operative's specifications, causing actual damage to the enemy for the first time in the war. But they were outnumbered and surrounded. One by one, the team members fell. A Chroman defender pulled screaming into the ceiling. A Solari sniper dissolved by acidic projections. A Drell-Tech specialist crushed between suddenly solid barriers. The operative fought with inhuman precision, its movements too fast to track, its attacks perfectly calculated, but even it sustained damage. A deep gash across its torso, a partial melting of one arm where Voidborn matter had made contact. "Fall back to Junction 17, it ordered the 6 surviving team members. "Create a diversion. I will proceed to the central hub." "That's suicide," Zal protested, firing continuous bursts at advancing Voidborn forms. "Even you can't." "This is not a debate, Commander. The mission parameters have changed. Proceed to Junction 17 and hold position for 4 minutes, then evacuate." Before Exal could argue further, the operative moved, not toward their planned route, but directly into the mass of Voidborn, fighting its way through with terrifying intensity. Within seconds, it had disappeared from view, leaving the remaining team to follow their new orders. The operative carved a path through Nexus Prime's corrupted heart, suffering damage that would have killed any normal being. Its nanite-infused physiology repaired critical systems even as it fought, prioritizing function over integrity. It didn't feel pain. Not as humans understood it, only registered damage and compensated accordingly. Finally, it reached the central hub, once Nexus Prime's command center, now transformed into something unrecognizable. At the core pulsed a massive concentration of voidborn matter, the primary synchronization node for this entire invasion force. The operative moved toward it, container in hand. But before it could reach the target, the voidborn reacted with unexpected coordination. The floor beneath the operative liquefied, dropping it into a chamber below. Walls closed in from all sides, forming a prison of living matter that began to analyze and attempt to absorb the unknown entity in its midst. For the first time, the operative faced the possibility of mission failure. Its systems calculated options, probabilities, scenarios, and found them all insufficient. The container with the nanunits was still sealed in its grip, but it could not reach the primary node. Then something unexpected happened. The Voidborn attempted direct neural interface, probing tendrils seeking to access and understand the operative's mind. It was a critical mistake. The operative's consciousness had been designed to be weaponized. The moment the Voidborn established connection, the operative reversed the information flow, injecting its own attack protocols directly into the enemy's neural network. For crucial seconds, the Voidborn surrounding it froze in confusion. The operative broke free, fighting its way back to the central chamber. Reaching the primary node, it activated the container and plunged it directly into the pulsing core. The reaction was immediate. The nanunits dispersed, targeting the synchronization structures with perfect precision. The voidborn matter began to convulse, its coordination failing as the microscopic attackers replicated and spread throughout its system. The operative turned to leave, and found its exit blocked by a wall of writhing voidborn matter. Through their connection, it sensed their desperate realization. They were dying, and they would take their killer with them. In the command center of the Eternal Dawn, Scenario watched as strange energy readings began emanating from Nexus Prime. "What's happening?" he demanded. The science officer looked up from her console, eyes wide. "The nanunits are working. The Voidborn are losing cohesion throughout the station." "But," she hesitated, "we're receiving a transmission from Commander Xal." The operative never rejoined them. It's still inside. Before Scenario could respond, a communication channel opened. The operative's voice came through, distorted but recognizable. "Deployment successful. Voidborn synchronization collapsing. Chain reaction will spread to all connected Voidborn clusters. We're sending extraction teams," Scenario began, but the operative cut him off. "Negative. The Voidborn are attempting to isolate infected sections. If any survive to adapt, they will develop immunity. Total elimination requires complete saturation." Understanding dawned on Scenario's face. "You're going to overload the nanunits. That will destroy the station and everything on it, including myself." "Correct. Recommend immediate withdrawal of all Alliance forces to minimum safe distance." Counselor Ferry stepped forward. "Operative, is there no other way?" A long pause followed, filled only with static. When the voice returned, it sounded different, less mechanical, almost human. "This is what I was made for, Counselor. My purpose." Another pause. "Tell those who come after that humanity's final weapon functioned as designed." "We will remember," Theory promised, her ancient voice breaking. Countdown initiated. 60 seconds to criticality. Operative, Shadow 7. Final transmission. The channel closed. Scenario gave the evacuation order immediately. Alliance ships pulled back from Nexus Prime, rescuing the surviving strike team members in desperate haste. Exactly 60 seconds later, the space station erupted in a blinding flash of energy, unlike anything they had ever seen. The explosion propagated along quantum pathways, following the Voidborn's own communication network. Throughout the sector, then beyond, Voidborn matter began to disintegrate as the nanunits spread, multiplied, and destroyed the synchronization nodes. In the aftermath, as Alliance scientists confirmed that the Voidborn threat had been neutralized, a solemn ceremony was held aboard the Eternal Dawn. Representatives from every Alliance species gathered to honor those who had fallen, and the mysterious human operative who had given them a future. Counselor Theri addressed the assembly, her ancient voice carrying wisdom earned through millennia. We sought a weapon and found a sentinel. We expected a monster and discovered a guardian. The being known as Operative Shadow 7 was created by humanity for a purpose we can scarcely comprehend, to ensure survival when all hope seemed lost. She gestured to the viewport, where stars shone with renewed promise. The humans who created Project Nightshade feared what they had made, and rightly so. But in their wisdom, they did not destroy it. They preserved it for a time of greatest need. Not their own, but ours. Commander Xal, still bearing the scars of his encounter with the Voidborn, stepped forward. In its final moments, the operative could have escaped. It chose not to. It chose complete victory over self-preservation. Perhaps, Theri mused, that is the true legacy of humanity. Not the weapons they created, but the choices they empowered. Even their darkest creation retained that most human of qualities, the capacity to choose sacrifice over survival. As the ceremony concluded and the Alliance began the long process of rebuilding, Scenario found himself returning to the secure data core where all records of Project Nightshade had been stored. Something had been bothering him since their final communication with the operative. There, in the final transmission logs, he found what he was looking for. The operative's last words, spoken too quietly for anyone but the ship's most sensitive receivers to detect. Protocol complete. Shadow 7 standing down. James Rodriguez, returning home. A name. A human name. Scenario stared at the words for a long time. Then he did something that would have once been unthinkable. He deleted them from the record. Some truths, he decided, were not for history to judge. Some sacrifices deserved to remain sacred. In the decades that followed, as the Alliance expanded once more and new species joined its ranks, the story of humanity's Dark Sentinel became legend. Children on 1,000 worlds would learn how, in the Alliance's darkest hour, they had awakened something ancient and terrible and beautiful, a weapon that had remembered it was once a person. The Forbidden Moon was declared a memorial site. No one returned to the facility beneath its surface. No one activated the remaining fabrication systems or explored the sealed archives. But in whispered conversations throughout the galaxy, species wondered about the mysterious humans who had created such guardians. Some said they were monsters who built monsters. Others claimed they were visionaries who understood what the galaxy might someday face. The truth, as Theri knew, was both simpler and more complex. Humanity had looked into the abyss of extinction and created beings capable of staring back unblinking. Then they had chosen to walk away from that power, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. 5 years after the Voidborn War, a signal was detected from beyond the galactic rim. A simple message on frequencies unused for centuries. Is it over? The message asked. Theri herself responded, yes, your sentinel fulfilled its purpose. The reply came days later. We mourn with you for the cost. We celebrate with you for the future. No further communications were received. The humans, it seemed, were content to remain in their self-imposed exile. But the Alliance now understood something profound about their departed members. They had never truly abandoned the galaxy. They had simply chosen a different way to protect it. On the anniversary of the victory at Nexus Prime, Alliance ships would travel to the edge of the galaxy and broadcast a simple message into the darkness beyond. We remember. We endure. We are grateful. And perhaps in the great darkness between galaxies, the descendants of Earth heard them. End.